So, well, after being introduced to each other, I think it is very good that we start a small presentation about how complexity becomes simple, because that has been my quest. Everybody is really doing very difficult things, and all the professors are using very difficult words. And everybody is always saying to me, Desiree, it's not that simple. Mm-hmm. And if we cannot explain it in some simple words, then nobody will really see why it goes wrong or what we are doing. And a lot of people are talking about complexity, and a lot of people are then trying to analyze problems with AI and then making more problems. And they start at the wrong side. So that's what I really want to show with just a few slides. I have 12 slides prepared. And I chose to have women in the center of the economy because for a lot of economies, it is true that there is a lot of paid work and a lot of unpaid work. And the biggest problem of our current system is that it is linear, as was already said a few times, but it's also accumulation. So everything accumulates. And if you start with one problem, you can solve it, but it will accumulate more problems. So let me start with a little presentation, and then you understand a little bit better what I mean. Hopefully, if you have questions, just do it in the meantime. And then we can see that we answer questions and that we... Wait, I don't do it like this because then you don't see the whole screen. Let me do it like this. Then you at least have a bit of space to have the band with the people in it also next to what I want to show you. First of all, well, most of you know me from online, but I'm Desiree Driesenaar, and I'm a systemic designer since about 15 years. And we design with sustainability in the middle, but that also means health in the middle. Because our medical system is based on sickness and not on health. And of course, sustainability and the natural world are connected to health, human health. If we do not have a healthy planet, then we do not have healthy humans. And we also design with abundance, because it is a function of nature. It's just that we don't use it. And that is because of the silos. So we always design systems that are citizen and planetary inclusive, and we want to do abundance for all. Not easy, because a lot of things are routines and are, well, culture. It is what Anna said. It's people have a scarcity mindset, and even in like eco villages, it all goes right when people start sharing, until someone gets into a scarcity mindset or gets into scarcity, and then you get trouble. And then they say, yeah, but you take more than I have. And because we have this kind of feeling of, yeah, being victims or being poor, or others being, I don't know, having more than we have. We have a mind that goes often to negative. So that's why I chose to have women central in this redesigning systems. The picture, the ecosystem of wicked problems, which was the one why you all came, is made by Philip Kotler and Christian Sarkar. And what you see is they are clear marketeers. So Philip Kotler was, of course, the old books I did in my business studies in the 80s. And now he's gone socialist. So you see that he has a lot of solutions in the Wicked Seven, which is his program, thewicked7.org. You can learn a lot from it, but it's also very socialism. And I think every country needs to have their own systems. Socialism is also accumulation. Because if you have very expensive products, then people, employees need much more salaries. So we fight for bigger salaries. And then everything gets more expensive. So there's always advantages and disadvantages for any system. This is our compass. I think it is a logical one. And I think, do you all know it? The global goals, all clear, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, we need to achieve them in 2030, so there's still a lot to do. Of course, they are interconnected. And what always helps me a lot is to think of them in this way. It is the wedding cake of the Stockholm Resilience Center. And there you see two things that are very interesting about systems and about nature. Everything is connected in each other, interconnected and nested. So you have one citizen in a society, in a company, in a family, in an economy, and you have to go through all the walls, all the silos, everything, all the budgets, Anne, as well. You said something about budgets, and yes, that's very difficult because everybody has his own budget, and yeah, that's competitive as well. So how do you do that? Well, the thing that we do when we design a system, we start at the bottom, the biosphere. So we first make sure we have healthy soil, but also we look at soil maps and we say, okay, where is soil that is really fertile? Then you need to grow food there. And where is soil that is less fertile? And that means, for instance, Anne, that if you have a government, they will often say, we need to build next to the village. But maybe that is fertile soil. Maybe you need to build somewhere else. Maybe you need to have like food forests around cities or around villages. Combine things. Then, of course, you go to the society. You go to the economy. And there you see that what we did is we made really global economies. And that is not very handy. Because like a multinational really sucks a lot of money out of a local system, a local economy, a regional economy. And it puts it in the pockets of anonymous shareholders. And that means that everything is dependent on big business. And on the shareholders spending this money, well, where? So what we always say, it's not a problem to have beer breweries, but make sure they are the local ones. Because if you drink Heineken, it will always be worse for the economy than if you do a local beer. So everything, I live in that instance, in a good country, we have about 70% of our economy is based on SMEs. And if you have very diverse SMEs, you can really create a lot. They don't even have to be super sustainable in the first instance. So I don't start immediately with making them very sustainable or with saying, oh, you should do. I really let diversity do its work. And how do I do that? This is what we do now, a very linear business model. We have a raw material, we have production, and the production is already producing a lot of waste, a lot of pollution, a lot of rest materials. We cut things out. So we have a lot of rest. Then there is, between production and consumption, there is a lot of transport and a lot of packaging, which are the biggest things in waste, packaging and transport. Then we go to consumption. Again, there's a lot of waste. And in the end, everything is waste. How could you do this different? Can anybody show me how you do it? How do you talk to your customers about this? Diane, can you say something about it?
Well, I don't know. In clothing, it's all about choosing good materials that can be repurposed and used for many years, and stop the fast fashion consumption and buy local also. So what I'm trying to do is to fortify, to make better the local industry, and try to help them become more sustainable and include circularity in their projects. That's my goal. But
what is the biggest problem with the producers? Is it the colors or is it the materials?
Well, there are so many problems, like the materials, the sustainable materials, for example, are not made in Mexico. Most of the fabrics are not made in Mexico. There is a huge dumping of fashion with ultra fast fashion like Shein that creates tons, like literally tons of the same shirt, and they all become waste. No, they don't even get sold. So there is an overproduction to minimize the price or the cost. One of the things that I want to talk about is about the difference between price, cost, and value. You know, that's the way I see it. You know, like it costs, I don't know, $19, but the price of the environment is like, I don't know, $300 or more. No, so some things like that. And also, I imagine in the food industry we can do better. You know, that's one of the. I'm not very. That's another thing that really concerns me. But the with food is very inefficient and very wasteful.
Yeah. And the production, because Mexico City is, of course, a big city, is there production in or around the city, or is everything imported? Or
Mexico, for example, imports a lot of corn, which is one of the basis of its food system. So we import from I think United States, and I don't know if Africa or India, but we import a lot. And there are huge plantations of, I don't know, vegetables around the city, but I feel like they are so inefficient.
Yeah.
For example, I imagine, I don't know, this is something that I imagine a lot, like urban farmings, like collecting all the waste from all the restaurants, turn it into compost, certifying the restaurants for zero waste, or not zero waste, but like they're mitigating their waste. and maybe measure it, and then I don't know. I think we can do so much better. It's
Yeah,
just-
lots of possibilities there, but a lot is also happening in that space. If you look, because of course there's a lot happening in urban areas, in urban food production. So there is a lot of in vitro and on water growing. There is also like very closed greenhouses and also on water growing, so that what then is used is the CO2 that is emitted. So what we do is we try to combine them on industrial estates or wherever it is that we need to grow things. And then you see there is a big demand, for instance, for spirulina or for other food, food production. We also see a lot of projects that, for instance, make mushrooms on coffee waste, which is, of course, a Mexico thing as well. And coffee is really one of the biggest change makers. It sounds maybe strange, but because of the caffeine, you can really do a lot with the coffee waste. So it's not only after you have made the coffee, but it is also the coffee waste from plantations. And it is even used at this moment also in clothing, because coffee and it is a plant that is anti-inflammatory, that really regulates moisture very well. So also sweat, it's used a lot in sports clothing now. And it also regulates smell, because that is really an important thing. But then it doesn't really solve the thing that you are looking for in fashion. And that is that they still then they use some of this coffee thing, the coffee waste, they use some of it in their brands. Nike does and Adidas does, and as I say, a lot of the sports brands do. But they still produce very unsustainably. And one thing that is really also very problematic is the fact that we always have this big divide between production and consumption. Because, for instance, if the fashion companies would work together with the washing machine companies, they could really solve the fact that they still want to produce synthetic fibers. Because one of the biggest problems in microplastics in the rivers and the oceans is the fact that we wash synthetic fibers. And then you can have washing machines and the designs are there, but of course there is a big commercial lock-in, because the washing machine companies do not want to change their cash cows. But there is a lot of innovation already available for washing machines that use UV light and sonic waves, and then you don't even need water.
Oh, wow.
And then it becomes interesting. But then, of course, it would be great if, for instance, Patagonia would embrace, I don't know, Bosch, Miele, it doesn't really matter what brand for me, but they should really get rid of the silo there. Because that is what I always mean by, designing through the silos. And then maybe with all your art and photography and everything, you can seduce them to do that. Become an artist and get for instance, a brand sponsor for your business, like Patagonia, or because you are in fashion, you can really get these yeah, and then you can make it into, first of all, a commercial effort to sustain your own business. And then also, because they get your stories, you can inspire their employees to do stuff like this. And the same is, for instance, with the materials. But I will get a bit later into that. Because we all know it's time to ask nature. Biomimicry, I'm really very glad. Janine Benyus started it in 1995. Her book is from then. And by now it is the #1 innovation method in the world. And it also doesn't mean that everybody understands biomimicry and what it means for regeneration. But they are close together. So the website asknature.org is a very interesting one, because you can find there the strategies of nature, and you can also find a lot of the projects since the 90s. So then you can also see what has already been done. There are many other methods and many other people who do stuff, and many other holistic sustainability ways. People in the natural steppe, people in circular economy, people in at this moment for cities, Diana, it's very, very good to look at the donut economy of Kate Raworth, because she is now redesigning Amsterdam, and it's all open source, all the information. So you could really see how she does it and how she really uses the planetary boundaries and also the global goals, and then finds solutions for all kinds of through silos.
Okay.
How do I explain it? How do I make complexity simple? I always make a scope, because if you start with one problem, then you seed problems. And what do I mean by that? Land, I said to Anne that a lot of governments have a very bad business model. And that means because their business model is very dependent on selling land. They have this idea that they have to clean up. And what they do, they are always cost. They are never gaining income streams with the government. So in our design of economies, the businesses make the value, make the money, make the added value, and the governments are just spending money. And how do they get this money? They sell land. That's really a very big thing in governments. And if they sell land, like in Holland, they sell land, for instance, to a distribution center. They're very popular in our place. And then they say, we don't have space to build houses, or we don't have space for the river, or we don't have whatever. But if you sell land to a distribution center, the next problem is that you get heat stress, you get drought. My internet connection is unstable, eh?
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yes.
for a second.
Yes. I'll first also make a light because I'm getting dark, I think. So I'll put a light on. One moment. It's easier like this. Okay. So I was, yeah, thank.
So if you're talking about selling land, you also mean like leasing it, companies, right?
Of course.
Because selling at some point ends.
Yes, of course.
That's
I think governments should really be very clear about what they want, and they should be designers. I work a lot with governments because I want them to be systemic designers. They have empty space and they need to decide who is next to who and why. And that's again why you say, okay, start with the soil maps and start with the water, and then see what is really clever and how we make it simple. Well, let me first finish the story about the distribution center, because if we sell land to just all kinds of energy slurping boxes, let me put it like that, if it is data centers or distribution centers or whatever is popular in whatever area, then we do get extra problems. In our country, distribution centers, they say they do it for the jobs, because every government wants to create jobs. They're always afraid that people don't have jobs. But there are sometimes bullshit jobs. Or there are jobs that you do not have the talent for. Like in my country, the distribution centers are, my bonus daughter is working in such a center as a forklift driver, and she's the only Dutch person in many teams. So the rest are Spanish people and Bulgarian people and Polish people. And that's not a problem. The only thing is, where do they live? So you again create an extra problem because you have to have housing, and housing is a very, very big problem in Holland. So then you have to start at the other side. You have to make a scope and say, what am I designing for? And it can be a region. It can be an industrial estate. We sometimes do a port, or we do a whole rural area or a whole city, a whole country even. I think personally that Holland should be designed as one blue-green city, so that you know that there are little towns in there, because we do not have cities. They're called cities in our country, but Amsterdam is not a city. If Diana would really come to Amsterdam, you would see that it's nothing like Mexico City. It is just a little town, a little provincial town. So Holland should be designed as a provincial area where we have lots of rivers, and we are the waste problem of the whole of Europe, because all the rivers end in Holland. So we import all the problems of Germany and France and Belgium and via the rivers. That comes into our soil. And that also means we have to design with what we have. So like in our group, we have persons who have, they make sure that the rivers go meandering again, so that all the toxic sediments go into one corner. And then we can harvest the heavy metals out of that sediment. And we can do something with those metals. So what we do is we harvest it either with machines if they don't understand phytomining yet, but I love the concept of phytomining. And there is already a lot of research on it. It's just a lot within the universities, and a lot of the things that are solutions are hidden in plain sight. So, yes, what is it that we can do? Do we know what phytomining is? Do you know?
No.
No.
Sounds
Well,
something
phytomining, phyto is plants, and we mine locally with plants. So there are plants that are hyperaccumulators, we call them. And for instance, in the University of Cork, it is my brother-in-law who's doing that. And he is a professor there, and he has a project to get cadmium out of the waters. And he does it with a plant, a water plant. And then with a technical process of pyrolysis, they harvest the metals again, the cadmium, they harvest it out of the plants. And of course, the universities have to tell us what the best hyperaccumulators are for certain metals or minerals. And this is also something that people are often saying to me, Desiree, a bioeconomy wouldn't work because you need so much plant material to do anything. Well, with phytomining, you can do everything, and you can just produce with minimum materials. Because if we do biomimicry, all molecules normally in chemistry, they have a lot of space around them, and they really design in structures. Well, at this moment in science and in engineering, this is already used. It's called generative design. It is done with 3D computers. And then you can really get a structure for a material. Or you can use a very thin membrane. And that means you don't have to have heavy steel anymore. But you can have very thin other metals that are by now everywhere in the world because we have so much polluted soil. So what I always do is I combine 2 or more functions, and I always try to clean up. So that is 3 functions in one process. I just to repeat a little, I just said, okay, when you have a river, you can really design it a bit more meandering, so you can trap the sediments in a certain corner, and then you can harvest the pollution, the toxic materials, the heavy metals out of there. You can also, of course, really harvest polluted soil. It is no problem anymore. We have in Amsterdam big projects, clean tech projects, with plants that are, they call it, sometimes the governments only do it for cleaning, but what we really like, because that's again the abundance, we want to also make sure that the government gets a new business model with it. And that's where AND comes in, because the government only thinks about cleaning. They say, oh, we need to clean the rivers. No, you do not need to clean the rivers. You need to either make a very strict law that people now finally stop polluting those rivers. So I really love it that we have the rights for rivers and for In Spain, there's now also a lake that's got rights. So we can sue, they get a guardian, that's how it works. Do you know how it works, the rights for rivers? Have you heard about it?
No.
Anne, have you?
Just a minute. Today is Constitution Day in Denmark, and yesterday I was at a celebration of nature's. We're a group of people trying to get nature into the Constitution, to give nature democratic rights in Denmark. And somebody referred to the lake in Spain, but I don't know more about it.
Well, you can look it up online. It's called Mar Menor.
Okay.
So that's it's a very polluted lake, and they got rights, but it's really a big movement. I think they are the first European ones. But then there are, like in New Zealand, the first one was in 2014. It is a river. You can also, if you look online in The Guardian, the newspaper, the English newspaper, they write a lot about this. And there's also in Canada, there's rivers. In America, even, there is a river who got rights. They were given that because of the indigenous people who fought so much for it. There is in Bangladesh, all the rivers got rights now. So they really did it all. The only problem with Bangladesh is that they made really strict laws. They gave all the rivers rights. And they also said all the farmers are not allowed, they all have to go organic. And they did it in one go. And the problem is that the farmers do not understand how to do it. So now the whole economy has collapsed. And everybody is very angry at the government, which I can understand, because at that moment, if people don't understand, it is really a communication thing and also an education thing. If you want to transition farmers, you should make it easy for them to transition and in their own ways. So also then I love to have real groups of farmers together. I do a lot with farming. I'm a permaculturist. But I also do a lot with regular farmers, and I love to have groups of regular and organic and biodynamic and permaculturists and whatever together, because then you can really get to the simple, easy solutions. Because the only thing you need to do, and then you start again for the biosphere, is compaction is the biggest problem. All the farmers use very big tractors. And I think it is also something that is at this moment, a moment in nature, let me put it like that. So it is not only human problem, it is also because of the drought, because of the fact that the planet is heating up. So what we need to do then is get organic matter on the soil. In permaculture, we do it a lot. Very easy. Just cardboard and 30 centimeters of compost. And then it will come all together. You can quickly start. So a lot of citizens love it because they say, this is easy. This is what I can do. Because we do whole campaigns where we say, grow food, not lawns. And then people say, but it's so difficult. But it's not, because you can just put cardboard on the soil and that will keep the weeds from growing too quickly. it will really repress the weeds. Then you put compost on it. We also teach people how to make their own compost, which is terra preta. And like Mexico City, you should know a lot about it in Mexico, because this is the soil that is made by our ancestors in the Amazon rainforest. And it has a lot of carbon in it. So we do it with biochar dust, and we make it of the kitchen waste of people. So then you can teach people, and even in very city-like environments, we do it, because then we make like a community garden, and then we inspire people to do the terra preta making. And then in their community gardens, they get a hang of really how to be again with nature, because the reconnection, and I think the regenerative people understand that best of all, the reconnection is the biggest thing, especially in cities. So what do we do to make it simple? Make a scope. Don't make it too big. Look at what you have in there, and then start designing through all the silos with citizens, with companies, rather SME companies than the really big ones. But you can be sponsored by big ones. We want the flows to go the right way, you know. So I sometimes also, because I have been in business and I speak the language of big CEOs of big businesses, so I sometimes try to make the connection there between a project and the sponsors. And then you can also, because we just saw that here there is a lot of waste. And then if you design, for instance, an industrial estate, you say who goes next to whom. Because I want a company to know that he has to be self-sustaining. So that means either he uses his own pollution and waste streams and rest streams, or he makes alliances with the neighbors in the same industrial estate to use it. And then it does mean that an industrial estate not only has like a company who emits CO2 in it, but also a greenhouse. Like Diana, you would like to have them in Mexico City. And it is a really good, because there's so much known now about the closed systems, how we use it. And it, of course, needs CO2, because plants grow on CO2. Spirulina grows on CO2. Plants grow on CO2. And here in Amsterdam, we have really a lot of those greenhouses as well. And a good film to watch on YouTube is Return to Eden. Return to Eden is a film, and it has both sides in it. So it has a lot of regeneration in it and permaculture, with animals, without animals. Oh, we get a Fabio. I don't know who Fabio is. Hello, Fabio. Are you there? Can you make yourself known, please? Otherwise, I do have to remove you again. Okay, I have to put you back in the waiting room if you do not make yourself known. So I'm very sorry, but I'll put you back in the waiting room.
It's chatting in the chat.
Oh, he's chatting in the chat. Okay.
Hi, I'm Helice's.
Oh, you're Heloise. Yes, I know you. You were supposed to be in the, yes. Well, welcome, Heloise. How wonderful. Can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about your project? Because you just come in the middle of the whole thing. We have already an hour. We have already done an hour. So maybe you can unmute yourself and then come in, and then you can do the last hour with us and look at the recording, because I will send you a recording later as well for the first hour.
I think she's having technical problems.
Yes.
I have like one question about what you were talking about. For
Yes.
example, could it be that the heat that the companies produce is transformed in energy, and could that be a simple solution? Like,
yes, yes. We also make heat sharing programs. So then, of course, it does need some technology, but what you see is that, hello.
I'm sorry, I thought we were at 8. So everybody...
No problem, Fabia.
I'm so sorry. Hi.
Yes, no problem, Heloise.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi.
Diana, let me first answer your question, and then I would like Heloise to tell us a little about your project, because then it becomes
good idea.
Easier to come with us.
Yeah.
Diane, there are indeed also heat sharing programs. So then a company who has excess heat. Okay. Bye, Anne.
Yeah, bye.
And really, yes, good to have you here.
Yeah,
and we will
so
be
much.
in touch again. Yes. Has it been useful for you?
Yes, really, and I'm looking forward to watch the rest, but I have to go now.
Oh,
of
so
course.
I'm sorry for that. Okay,
No
bye.
problem. Bye.
my internet.
Diane, so the heat sharing, as you understand by now, for the whole, after this hour, we do a lot of sharing things. And that is also what makes it complex, more difficult for a company, because they have to look beyond their own boundaries. But there are really schemes where we, for instance, have one building, and there are a lot of companies in there, and they use each other's restroom. An example is Blue City in Rotterdam. They have, for instance, a beer brewer, and they emit CO2, and that is used to grow spirulina. But we also have, like in Groningen, we did a big project, and there we have a company that has an excess of heat, and we made sure that the neighboring company, the neighboring one who needs heat, uses that heat. The only problem then is the contracts. So the company next door, the organization next door, I should say, because it is an old people's home. And then the company who has the excess heat says, yeah, I cannot really guarantee that I will always have this heat. So you will have to have more sources of energy as the old people's home. And then you can really make good alliances. And it's very important that we have people who understand this and who can also negotiate between these two companies or two organizations, because an old people's home normally doesn't speak the language of the company that has the excess heat. So then communication is again important.
Okay.
Heloise.
Hi.
Group.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very curious about the rest, but I missed this part. So,
But tell us a little bit about your project and why you are here, so that I will then give you a very short update on what we did.
Yeah.
And then we can make it really accessible for your project.
Yeah. I think then I'm a little bit different. I'm a visualizer, a concept developer. And I follow projects, and also I help to develop the concept, so I'm also in. But I'm more the one who visualizes those things of transition plans. So I'm always very curious, and it helps me to have the update of all the developments, and to inspire and help to visualize things so people can understand the connections better, how things work, or just
very important in systems design to have somebody like you, because you give a different view on it.
Yeah, for me, sometimes there's a lot of text in reports or something, and I really like to make the translation into images, and also when you visualize things, it's also a way of concept development, and because then you see things. When you're in words, you get more divided in a way. So the one person is making his point, the other person is making his point, and when you put images together, you see the wholeness of things, and sometimes you switch some things, and you see, okay, now we both have a thing we both like a little bit more. So that's my role in
well, you're not so much different, because we have Diana here, and she's also a photographer, and she's
okay,
very much a bit on the edge of the projects, and I think even Tijn is a lot too on the edge of projects. So because we all like to see the whole system, and I think it's very important that you can have a bit of an eagle view then.
Yeah.
And not get too dragged into the, oh yeah, but I'm right, and oh yeah, but it should be like this. And so if you have this eagle view, it makes it easier. So let me give for you a little bit of a very short summary.
Oh yeah, the social dilemma.
This is, I think, an easy picture, huh?
Yeah.
So we have the global goals, which is very clear that we all know them, we all work with them, I think. But the problem is that they are interconnected. And what I always do to make it a little bit more easier and in line with nature is the fact that two things about nature. Nature designs abundance with the letters E, I, and N, in.
Okay.
So it's always interconnected and nested. Everything is nested in each other. And that's something that linear cannot do. And not even circular does it most of the time, because they're not spiraling. They are really trying to get a resource, get it through the lines. They make, this is normally the linear way of how it is now done. We take a raw material, we produce and have a lot of waste, a lot of rest streams, then we consume and have a lot of waste. And in the end, everything is waste. Between production and consumption, there's still a lot of transport and packaging. So we always say, take that out as the first thing, go local, because you need way less packaging and way less transport. So that's a big cut already.
Yeah.
And then we still need to overlap the production and consumption thing, because what we do is we always design through walls of everything. We use biomimicry. AskNature.org is a very good site to see how the nature strategies work. And how do we make it simple? In the recording, you will hear how, if we start with one problem, you seed more problems. So we always start at the other side. We start with a scope, and we make a kind of a circle around the scope. And then we start, look what is inside, and we use everything to create more value. And that is also a question that Diane had about value and cost and money. And that is, of course, a very economic question about it. But there are, at this moment, a few economists who really give a lot of perspective on that. And one thing is Mariana Mazzucato. She made a TED Talk. And what you can glean from her TED Talk is that what we do, because we have just GDP as a compass, is we see that governments and businesses do not really take up the good role. We have businesses and they create value, and that is money. Normally, they also create a need for a basic need, or at least a need. Like in your case, Diana, you do a lot in fashion. So there's a need for clothing. There's a need for beauty. There's a need for, everything we need in identity and everything. So I'm definitely not against clothing. But if you want to do it sustainably, then it is important that you look at production, you look at consumption, and you make sure that you grab every waste stream and rest stream and pollution stream before it gets the label waste.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as it gets the label waste, it has no value anymore, no money value and no other value. So if you grab it before, then it still has value. If you have like FSC wood and you saw it in two and you put it in the waste bin, then in our linear economy, it is not shortened wood. It is waste, and it has completely lost its value. So that's where it's important that on the industrial estates themselves and in the companies themselves, they start doing stuff with their waste. Consumers, the same thing. They can do stuff with their waste. And that's why we say everybody a prosumer. Companies, they should be self-sufficient on everything. They should know how they should make their chains very short for the purchasing. Do that locally. First look, are there restrooms I can use? Then, of course, they have to make their production processes healthy. There's a lot of biomimicry in that. And then you have the waste streams at the end. And maybe they do not loop to the same company, but they loop to the neighbors in the same area. So that is again something why I say we can have a growing, abundant economy, also money-wise, because the companies should really produce more values than one. And if a government has a bigger dashboard, that's important. Not just GDP, not just the money, but a bigger dashboard. I always say, as a very general vision, it can be just happy and healthy people on a healthy planet. Nobody can be against that. And then you start designing. Let me tell you what's happening on the regeneration field. Because, of course, at this moment, the big term is nature-based solutions. It's the bioeconomy. And the bioeconomy is really restoring ecosystems big scale. It is already going on for decades, and a lot of it is hidden, but there are really big projects. These pictures come from John Liu. There is a documentary online, Green Gold, and there you can see how in 15 years' time, they got from the left picture to the right picture. And it is an area the size of Belgium, the size of my whole country, Holland. So, and it is in China. And what they do then, they restore ecosystems and they build regional economies with it. So what we do is we do a lot of work on product design, because product can be bio-based with abundantly available materials. What are abundantly available materials? Abundantly growing. Give me some. Tijn.
Growing there with a lot of plant materials, a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs. I would say the Netherlands, most of it is grass at the moment.
Grasses, yes, definitely. Why are grasses abundantly available materials? And do you know kinds of grasses that are?
Well, for us, most of it is because, let's say, in the agricultural area, it's a specific type of grass that is being sown the most.
Yeah, that's the miscanthus, I think. Yeah.
I would say the Engels raaigras in that
Yes.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
for feeding cows. So most of it is used for food now. If you look, let's say, in the coffee industry, what is abundantly available is, like the example, only I think 1% or 5% of the plant biomass is eventually used to make coffee. So the remainder of that is not often used.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of becomes waste.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. So yeah, well, I guess we have to divide between what we plant ourselves and what grows naturally in nature. Of course, you have the algae blooms that sometimes occur. So there you have just microalgae, but also the like seaweed and stuff, I would say. Those kind of things.
Yeah, wonderful. Do you know any more, Heloise?
Yeah, I'm wondering, how do you collect these materials in this natural environment? or are you then, yeah.
Yeah, I must say there is a lot of discussion about that because first of all, what we do, if we plant, we always use native species or species that are at least very good for that specific ecosystem. So that specific climate zone. There are, I think, 6 or 7 climate zones. And you really look in permaculture to what you plant where.
But then you in a way you make an how it's called, een plantage.
Yes, yes.
So you really can collect it, and maybe also with machines, or yeah, how does that work?
Yes,
you
that's
asked
the
me a
interesting
question. Now I am
Yes.
asking you
Oh,
questions.
I love it because that's what the questions are. I sometimes don't know what people know or not. So yes, what we do, we ecologically intensify. So we try to make as much produce on a small piece of land. And that means that is what food forestry, for instance, is about. We make food forests, which are never a real forest. They are edges of forests, and they have 7 layers. And all we call it gildes, the guilds. And the guilds are plants that work together. And then you can imagine that we build like in this design in China, but there are many, many more designs. You have always perennial plants. So they're not they're mostly not food plants that are just one seed and then you have to buy next seeds. That's now the business model. But what we do is a lot of perennial plants, so they last longer than just 1 year, which is very good for the soil. And then we combine higher trees with smaller trees and bushes. We combine it with ground cover. We combine it with roots. We combine it with climbers. And that means you have a lot of ecological intensification in an area. So you have a lot of materials. But then you also have a lot of different systems that you have to make. Because if you have a polyculture like that, now we mostly have monocultures, and they are easier to harvest.
Yeah.
So if you have a polyculture, you have to find a solution for the problem of harvesting.
Yes.
And you can go 2 sides. You can either make business models of consumers and producers together. So they are called the CSAs, the community supported agriculture. And then you make sure that your customers come and harvest. You can also go the other side and go very technological. And then you can have, for instance, swarm drones, because you need to make sure that you are able to harvest very diverse crops. And they have to be scanned on ripeness, on size, because now we do it the other way around. We produce a monoculture and we produce mainly for packaging and transporting logically.
Yeah.
We also produce kilos, so that's why everything has so much water in it, because we want to produce big things, big cucumbers, big peppers, perfect tomatoes, and they become water bombs.
Yeah.
So if you really go for nutrient production, you will go for more wild varieties. And you will also, yes, have irregular produce. So then you can use like swarm drones that have sensors that just pick things and that are also light on the land, because I said in the first hour that the biggest problem of our land is compaction. So we need more organic material in the soil. We need definitely more microbes in the soil. And we need to shelter those microbes in biochar dust. That's why I love biochar, and there's so much biochar in permaculture methods. And we have to make them breathe, because otherwise they will not be able to survive.
Indeed,
And
it is
then Diana thinks, well, Tijn, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like, so we're talking about the food forests in this case, but of course there's no debate and criticism about we can't, of course, only just use food forests for a whole food system. So we need diversity in that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe it's also in former question, it sounds like you need to extract at sometimes. So let's say when I'm talking about algal blooms or other things, feels like you might extract eventually nutrients or in what organic form whatsoever from the ecological systems. But then the thing is that you can bring it back as well. So then you just think about circularity, right?
Yeah. Yes, there is a whole plaque of sargassum before the coast of America. It is big. It is 2 times the size, I think, of the whole of the USA. So it's really horrible. So there doesn't come any light into the sea at that moment. And it's as bad as the plastics, the plastics continent. The thing is, it is important to harvest that, to clean it up. But then it can be used as biogas, because it has a lot of, the sargassum has a lot of oils in it. So America, and it's really been worked on as well by Born Global, for instance. They do big projects. There are a lot of cluster economies now who use biodigester systems to give energy to a whole area. Some of them are really big companies or big installations. You also have smaller ones. And for instance, on El Hierro, where I did a lot of work, it is a small Spanish island. They really make it, they have a lot of local energy systems, and all of them together make the energy. So they have just a few windmills, they have 2 basins, so they have height. And a lot of things can be stored in difference. And that is maybe the biggest insight of biomimicry. Everything can be done with difference. And that's also why nature has so much diversity. So you can have height difference. And then if the windmills have too much wind and get too much energy, they use it to pump the water up. And then later, when the wind doesn't blow, then the water comes down and you have that kind of energy. They also have the biodigesters, smaller ones. So it is not so bad to have them in your back garden, because we don't all want these very big things with lots of transport movements and everything in our back gardens. So, and of course, El Hierro is a kind of a small island. It's a volcanic island. And I think this island thinking is really very important for regenerative people, because islands are a natural bio region. So in Holland, it is always hard because we have rivers and they go through France and Belgium and then come to Holland. And we are the big dump of problems because we are the end of the line. But then you have to make deals with France and Belgium and everybody alongside the river. But if you can get people to think in islands, so that's what we do in Limburg ports, for instance. We take one industrial estate and we say, okay, let's assume this is an island. And now we go self-sustaining. How do we do that? And then you have to design the whole thing differently. But Diana, I also want to give you some ideas for the city because you're in Mexico City. And of course, we want cities to be islands too. And we want cities to be cool and to cool the planet. We want cities not to have heat stress and drought, but we want them to be sponge cities and we want them to be edible cities. And then there are a lot of movements. There is this Asian technical guy and he made the tiny forests. He also had a TED talk, Tiny Forests, you can look it up. And he says it is the same method as we use here with the 7 layers, but on a tiny piece of land. And it just creates either food or biodiversity. Then we also have a lot of projects here in Europe where we make plants clean the air, outdoor air and indoor air. So we make plant walls inside buildings. And we also, there is a list of the 10 most cleaning plants, and it is made by NASA because, of course, they did all this research in the space shuttles, so they still have some use. So look at the NASA list of cleaning plants. That is for indoor plants. And then if you look at outdoor plants, it would be a very good idea to also have edible plants there. So you can make really an edible city. But what you also see, if people still want kind of not planty surfaces, they use the example of the zebra. Because a zebra has black and white stripes. And also here you see that because of the difference in color, the stark difference in color, and still white and black are full spectrum colors, both of them. But because they have such a difference, because white reflects the light maximum, and black absorbs the light maximum. And that's when a little flow of air comes and cools the animal. Well, that is what we also do in city designs and in architecture. So there is a lot done by Anders Nyquist. He is a Swedish architect. And he already started all of this in the 1970s. He has wonderful schools in Sweden with termite ventilation. You can see how he does it, even with ceilings. We have in Venlo in Holland, we have also a building with termite ventilation, but it works with a solar chimney. So all these architectural ways are a bit different. But what happens is you work with the principle of nature that hot air rises. So you make sure that the cool air comes in via the soil in a building. Then, of course, inside the building, it gets warmer and it spirals up. And Anders does it with very slow ventilators and design. And in Venlo, we do it with a big feed and a solar chimney. And then you also have to make sure that at the top, you have openings so the air can go out again. And if I talk about this to citizens and say, okay, for instance, in the 2 years of COVID, we needed ventilation, people, we needed ventilation. And you don't need machines, you just need a bit of height. So put one door open or one window on the bottom floor. Make sure it goes over the stairs, and make sure that in the attic there is another window open. You get ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that you can already do and work with. But of course, we also do a lot of work with the architects who all have to design this, and with the infrastructure people, because we need roads that clean the water and infiltrate. And like in Africa, we try to design cities the way from the perspective of a mosquito, because you don't want malaria in cities. So what you do then is make sure there's no still water in the city. So you have to infiltrate all the water, make sure it goes to the groundwater. And the water that is in the city needs to be flowing. So it needs to be flowing rivers. And then you can also work with a lot of plants on the buildings, because mosquitoes do not like citrus smelling plants, and they do not like lavender, and they do not like walnut trees. And that is something that, older people know. In the old farms, there were always walnut trees next to the pond, so that you will not have mosquitoes on the pond. But we forgot those knowledges. And then, of course, I said it in the beginning, what is most important is that we can adapt all these solutions to local ecosystems and local cultures. Because in Africa, I don't think walnut trees are the big solution. South Africa has fynbos, and that's bushes with very small leaves, because then they do not evaporate so much water. Are there any questions about this, about the plants, and about are there any things that you come across where you say, yes, this is something I need to know more about?
I would like to know how you start to make those designs for the solutions. For example, the one that it was in the LinkedIn of the wicket problems.
Yes.
You had a post after that I just recently saw that I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So how do you start? Like, where do you start? You put like one thing and then you start creating all the associations, or how do you start to make those diagrams?
Yeah. Yes. But the thing is, I do not do problems. As I said in the beginning, if you start with one problem, you seed more problems. So I always start with one solution project. So what I do is I make a scope. And then I start with one project that combines different that solves more problems in one go. I always want to have maximum impact and minimum effort.
Okay.
So there are always multifunctional solutions. And then I do, as Kotler also did, which is this one. Let me put it, this one. This is the scheme. And I must say, I mostly start in the middle because
Okay.
that works best.
Okay.
So in this case, poverty is in the middle, which is a very important economic one. If you look at the global goals, because number one is no poverty. So that's what they put in the middle. Number two is zero hunger. So you can put those two in the middle, maybe three as well, good health and well-being. But then something weird happens. Because if you put poverty there, then everybody says, oh yeah, that's logical. We don't want poverty. And I'm at this moment in Greece and everybody feels very poor. And I say, you are not poor at all. You just have a lot of assets and no cash flows. I have here a friend and well, I have many people here who have houses and they are owned by 50 plus cousins because that is the one on the top, the inherited wealth. And if you have one house and it is owned by 50 plus cousins, you cannot create cash flow with it because you cannot sell it. You don't even they don't even know who it belongs to. And you can also not rent it because somebody has to agree that it is rented. So here you have huge empty villages full of wonderful wealth, money, assets, buildings, and they're crumbling because nobody knows who it exactly belongs to. And also nobody wants to sell because they want to have it as a holiday home. So some people, they live in Athens because they have the job there. And then they are here in the village and they come here maybe for 2 months in the summer. And then they use their family home. And the rest of the year, it is poverty, pure poverty, but nobody wants to do something about it. And nobody wants to make it into cash flows. But that story is difficult for people.
We lost her.
Yeah. Seems so.
Everybody's moving except Desiree. Yeah, there she is again.
Okay, I am here again. So that is the problem with a word like poverty. Everybody wants to solve it, but the solutions are really very depending on local culture and local ecosystems. And then there is here a lady in the village, Cristiana Gardi-Chioti, and she is, since 2016, she's busy with, we met, and she is since 2015, she had Günter Pauli here, and she wants to revitalize the villages and do sustainable things. And that is difficult if people, for instance, everybody wants here for their children to be a lawyer or a government job because that's the safe jobs and they don't want to be farmers. So the olive yards here are neglected, which is good because then they go back to nature. And then we have wild olives, which is really good because that's where the high polyphenol olive oil comes from. And in the European Union, we have only one health claim we can make on food because all the other health claims are not allowed. But the one health claim there is on high polyphenol olive oil. So here we then train people to be, to graft the trees and to make them healthy again with biochar and crushed volcanic rock. Also the easy methods, we like to do the easy methods so that people don't feel it is so difficult to be a farmer. And then we combine it with other things that they can do, because you have to make then a business model for a farmer with multiple income streams.
Desiree, maybe in this example, so the inherited wealth thing that seems to be known by everyone because everyone is a part of it. So that's not necessarily new information. But let's say how to solve that login or how to work with that, and maybe also indeed how to get the right information to work in a more natural way, get this knowledge back of working with the olive orchards. Let's say, how do you approach that? So I guess you need to talk with a lot of people to get a feel for the system, for the scope that you're in, but also it seems often that you need some external knowledge, or is that not the case? So how do you really say concretely combine these things? Because yeah, it's difficult to identify which is also the best choice, or how the connection is really working, how strong a connection is.
Yeah. The thing is that in a lot of these cultures, there's also a lot of corruption. And even then, you cannot use the word corruption because they don't see it as corruption, but they have a government job and they still want to make money at the side. And that is what I call corruption, because you have a steady job. You should not be more greedy than that. But they do not call it corruption because they say you are a company and I want money to just allow to give you a law that really, and I say your job is giving me a law and a possibility and space. So I have a lot of talks with people, but in their language. So I think the most important thing is to have friendly energy and talk the language of the people you have in the whole scope. And with a business, it's often the case that they do not want to really do sustainable. They really have a lot of trouble staying afloat at this moment. So that's where I'm really glad that in Holland we have now the stricter laws of ESG. Because it means that in 2024, a lot of bigger companies need to report on ESGs, which is environmental and social governance. And that also means they have to think about it. And they have to incorporate it in their business, because it's not enough to say, I give a little money to the local football team. Well, that's not environmental and social governance. You need to, at some point, get carbon credits, or you need to do other stuff to really make sure how you have less polluting ways and earn more money with other income streams, because you have to do both to transition companies. And some of it is really there's some education about this, but I think the communication education often misses, because a lot of people come from one side, and they either speak the voice of the citizens, and then they're really good in citizen projects. Those are a lot in our regenerative tribes, and I love it. And I think the artists and the visual designers and everything can have a great role in this, because we need easy schemes, easy, one visual to make it clear, an infographic or one thing with just a few words, and then a really great picture, so that people get insights, and it bridges, because that's what we need. We need bridges between all the silos. But sometimes it's also a matter of really having the experience in the field, which is not really educated like in schools. So that's why we now in Holland started the Biomimicry Futures Academy. And we want to be really also a school education, but we work with all kind of universities and high schools, and because this is not taught in school. We have education that is old-fashioned. We have economy education that is really not about ethical business models. And then the savvy ones, because like the healthy building in Venlo, we needed 13 million extra to get it done. And we got the decision of the whole municipality in half an hour. And why? Because we calculated with cash flows instead of ROIs. And it meant we had black figures in the second year. And if we would have done return on investment, it would have been 15 years. And that is over the scope of our governments, because they're only chosen for 4 years. So, and they want to have quick results. So then when we could show it's the second year, then they got interested. And how we need to do that, well, that is something a bit more professional to do, because you need to know about economies and about figures and about money and about how it all works with banks and with what we did is also go through silos, because we made material passports so that the materials could be used at the end of the lifespan of the building. So that means there is already value staying in such a building, even though it is in the future. But for a bank, it is still value in a system. You can calculate with it. We also made sure, very circular economy, that in the building were only leased materials. So we leased the furniture and the everything, and we said to them, do the maintenance. We also calculated through all the silos from beginning investment, so the first investment, the maintenance, and the end of life, and how to, get the building, reuse the materials in the building. And one thing that was also a big insight is the fact that the cost of a building, and here you get again, Diane, it's about cost and value and money. Only 9% of the building cost is energy and materials. I think 1% is energy, 9% is materials, and 90%, 90, is the cost of the people, which is sickness leave in this case, because it was a city hall And the sickness leave was really big. So then we calculated how a healthy building, and then of course we went with the architect on what is a healthy building with non-off-gassing materials, with, well, how do people feel healthy in a building? How do they move through the building? How do we use all the materials and the things? But even 0.5% less sickness leave would give us the money to invest in a healthy building. And that was easily done because they came from a place which was horrible. And we gave them a building where you don't have headaches, and it's really great to work, and it's really inspiring. And so the 0.5% was, after the first few years, we saw that it was not even 0.5%, it was already 1% and 1.5% that we saved. So then with savings of money, you can, in the beginning already, finance the 13 million. So that is also ways to do it, just by doing things differently through the silos.
Very interesting. Like about perspective also, and
Yes.
creativity.
Are there any questions at this moment? Because we were going to talk about economies in which women were central, because you have so much volunteer work in economies as well.
Yeah, how do you see it, the voluntary work, or do you want to have it in the whole flow of also paid work? Of how do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do I see here?
Yeah. Well, I see a future, and sometimes people get very confused there because I include a lot of technology. And there I see that at this moment, we have huge movements that are making distributed systems with Web3. And that means we can have basic incomes for everyone in designed Web3 environment. And that means community currencies.
Yeah.
And it also means in the regions. And it also means over topics.
Currency over regions and topics.
Yes. So you can imagine that you can have, like we now have the euro here.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, of course, something that the government decides about. So there is a rule of macroeconomics that a currency is stable when you create assets. There is at this moment not a connection to the gold standard anymore. So you have to create assets. That means really, I don't know, buildings, companies, things that create money in the same currency scope.
Yeah.
So that is the euro. Well, that is why at this moment, for instance, in my country, Holland, Sigrid Kaag, our financial minister, is spending so much money because she can do it. We don't have a big debt yet. And she says we have to only create assets in the whole scope. So that's whole of Europe. But of course, the people in Holland don't see that is the reason she does it. So everybody says, yeah, we are paying for it. And it is, of course, true, because the citizens pay for the salaries of the government and for a lot of the costs that the government makes. So governments, in my humble opinion, are often a waste of space because they should be leaders who understand what I tell you now, modern ways of doing it. but they don't often do that. So what we can do is make community currencies and make them regional. So we can have a bioregion currency, for instance, and we can design those. We can design those with cryptos. So there are on Ethereum, there was the blockchain, and there was the Bitcoin. And of course, that became a whole speculative, everybody just went there to become rich, and the first ones became rich. So it's a big, like, multi-level marketing scheme where everybody is trying to get rich, get to the top, and nobody gets there now anymore because it's just one big lottery. You don't know, it's not a stable currency. You don't know what happens tomorrow. And if Elon Musk makes a tweet, then it goes all directions. So it's really not a stable currency. But after blockchain came Ethereum. And Ethereum is also a kind of blockchain. They also, last year, they had the big demerge, and that also meant that they now save 99% energy. So the blockchain was very, very energy consuming, and Ethereum is not now. They are fully distributed. And then I think it was 2018 that I met the people of the Bancor protocol. They work on Ethereum. They are a bunch of Israeli people. They moved, they became rich in the first YouTube kind of companies. They did a lot in music. They're really artists, great people. They have families now, they're in their 30s, and they moved from Israel to Switzerland because it is the only country where you can experiment with money without getting into trouble with the law. So they moved with a group of people to Switzerland. And Israel has a long history of community currencies because they have the kibbutz there. So they have all these ecosystem, kind of eco-villages and eco-communities. And the kibbutz system is a real citizen system of how to do communities. And they met up with one of the most wonderful economists of France, Bernard Littard. And he died a couple of years ago, but they met up in the last years of his life. And he became an advisor to them. And I met them, a few years before Bernard died. And he asked me to do a project for regenerative farmers with these currencies. In the end, we didn't get the funding. It was with a university of a UK university. So we didn't really design the marketplaces, but you can imagine that you can design a market for regenerative farmers and for a whole region with cryptos, with Web3, which is now the new word for it, because it is all in data, it is digital designs of money. And there are a lot of projects now going on. One other thing you can do is do it over a topic. So there are a lot of communities now in the whole space of digital, especially in the gaming communities and in the other ones, that have their own tokenization. And we, for instance, are now working on one, which is the Blue Hearts. And that is this one. And we combine ocean restoration with tokenization, with education and inspiration over an app. And yeah, then you can really combine on a topic, because we chose ocean because all these water lovers, they are sustainable by design. They see the plastic, they are divers, they are boaters, they are sailors, they are swimmers, but also tourists. People love beaches, so we do citizen science and we do lots of inspiration there, and we try to scale it by using technology and building online big communities on a topic, and then getting people savvy with systems, which is a bit hard because the regenerative people are really into nature and they say we do not like computers. And I have a lot of regenerative people, by the way, in my computer teams. So there are people, for instance, Clear CO2, they make carbon credits available for SMEs, and they do a large project in the UK, making carbon credits available for food banks. So that's really a good cause. And also over digital systems. But now back to your question, Eloise. How do I see it?
Yeah.
I see that we are
Big
moving.
question.
Yeah, I see that we are moving to a citizen inclusive society.
Yeah.
In which people take their fate into their own hands. So in the future, in all these tech communities, there's a lot of talk about how we will live without banks and even without governments. I don't think it will happen overnight, but they are working very, very hard on not making tech oppressive. And that needs a bit more explanation, but there are really a lot of systems. That's also why I decided to do in 2 weeks' time another 2 hours on specifically that topic. Because there is a lot to say about that, and governments at this moment are putting cameras everywhere and trying to control us all and really trying to, and then there's AI, and it all seems so, yeah, there's a lot of talk, we should stop it, but well, should we? Or should we maybe halt it a little? There are absolutely a lot of ethical people in the whole designs of the systems, but then coders are mostly not regenerative people. They don't know about nature, they don't know about sustainability. So do they design the systems well enough? I don't know. We will figure it out, I guess. And that also means that women should be in the middle of also all of this. Because I think women and young people, that's why I work with a lot of women and young people. Because the older men are often like, yeah, Desiree, so idealistic. And they also, there's one guy, and he really put it very clearly why they don't want to listen to me. Because he said to me, I did a big class on healthy buildings for school leaders. And then we had very good interaction. And afterwards, the women came to me and they really said, oh, yeah, and I want to know about healthy buildings and this and that. And he came up to me and he said, Desiree, you should not tell us so much about things. Because if you start talking, I close down. Because I don't want to be less than you. I don't want to know less than you. I feel stupid.
Oh,
And older men often do not want to feel stupid and not less than, I don't know how they see me. Sometimes I can be, if I really talk one-on-one with CEOs, I can be really in my suit. I sometimes suit up then and really say, okay, I'm 58, I know what I'm talking about. So, and then they don't have such trouble with it. But if I am in groups like this, I don't know. I don't know why they have trouble with just getting information and not always being the ones to. But then I think the young people understand it. They want democracy. Well, the democracy is reinvented with Web3. It will be not only longer periods of time, but it will always be also be citizen inclusive. So we will really design systems much better the way also nature does it, with leaders. And then if the pack says, don't go hunting, then the leaders know that they saw something that the leaders did not see. We are reinventing money with lots of different currencies and tokenizations, which is important. We are
but is that also a way to give value to in voluntary work? So they're
yes, definitely.
So yeah, that was my concern,
Definitely.
that we have so much value which is not into the economy.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
also nature, for instance, but
Yeah.
women and caring for their kids and yeah.
Well, it is a matter of designing the systems, and that's why I also want to be in a lot of education for the coders and the ones who design the systems. Because you are completely right. There is so much not in the economic system. And most of the sustainable people say we should put a price on nature. And I say, don't do it because it becomes more expensive. I don't want food to become more expensive. Please don't do it.
Yeah, because then you are thinking from the economy we have it right now, and then you put a price on everything instead of looking out of the value and then see,
Yeah.
hey, can we make flows? More. Yeah, you say more flows altogether, and yeah.
For instance, my friend Vandana Hart, she's rather famous. She has a Netflix series, We Speak Dance. And she's a professional dancer and she dances. When she made the Netflix series, she danced mostly in cities with local people, with artists, with everybody. And then she really decided she wanted to include nature in it and Gaia. So she did, there is this one thing where she is in one of the COP meetings, and she decided to make the movement Dance for the Planet. And then she decided that what she wants is to give artists their role back in the economic system. And she does it with NFTs, which is non-fungible tokens. And then you can make money as an artist, which is hard.
I know.
I know. So that's why she educates them on NFTs, which is purely community driven. And then you can give them strands of money. But also then people need to get involved in this kind of thing. And they must want it. And as I say, for a lot of regenerative people, they say, let me not do computers because I really want to do nature. And that is a choice. I try to do a bit of everything. I work in Greece and I have really tough conversations with governments or with local businesses or with local communities, or I try to make the cake bigger for everyone and try not to be too harsh on anybody. And then I also online try to be in these kind of communities to see what's going on. And I combine it with nature, which in my case, I need to be with water. So in Holland, I live next to the river or a stream, or for me it is water, but I need to have my feet in the water. I need to be in the water somehow. So that is sea or, But then for other people, it can mean forest. Yeah. It can mean build your own tiny forest. It can be, and like in Schumacher College, which is a really wonderful regenerative college, we always said, make a nature place for yourself, a Gaia place. And it can be just a little tree or a little bush or whatever, very close to your front door. And I can imagine, especially for Diana, that is important. Because you live in Mexico City, it will be very hard to find nature. But then if you connect to such a little piece of nature and meditate there, or even sit in the rain, rain is really nature. And then you can
water again.
Yes, it's again the water. And then you can also make people understand that everything is nature. Concrete comes from nature. And you can dance the concrete softer. Because what is the biggest problem in the cities is that everybody is a zombie. They just walk with their ears on and they just don't they don't look around. And if I do a little silly dance, I always love to do that. And people look up and they think, this is, and they get a smile. And that is good. That is also nature.
People are like digitally connected to their phones or to the other people, but not emotionally connected to their surroundings.
Yeah, that is a big problem nowadays, definitely.
I believe that it's we need a lot of emotional intelligence, for example, for like to grow as a society and survive. You know, let the ego outside, like what you were saying, because it comes from like lacks and problems from the infancy or society or the narrative. I think the narrative that we tell each other and we tell ourselves and we tell as a society is super important. If we can change the narrative of what's valuable, what has value, because right now a lot of the narrative value is in things that are just to like pop up your ego, but we need to change the narrative of what's valuable and what's desirable. And I feel like if we can change that narrative also, it can be easier to move everything else.
Yeah. And that's maybe why some people think that my stories online are a bit confusing, because I also say somebody who is definitely not in sustainability, but is just into fashion. Diana, you are in sustainable fashion, but some people are just into fashion and identity and who am I? And then they try to change Instagram to without filters, or they are older and they do not really change their face, and they really dare to look not perfect, and or they do things with young people on I don't know, on bulimia or things like that. And then they don't have to, for me, be also, of course, I will tell them about seaweed and how everything is fibers, so you can make fashion with it. And you can make colors with either natural materials, but how nature does it is also structure, nanostructures, and reflection of light. It is like the butterflies do it. They don't use toxic inks, but they are beautiful, and they do it with reflected light. Well, that are things we can learn from biomimicry. But it needs a bit of technology and a bit of production and knowledge on how to do it. So that's why I spread that as well. But I also spread the desire, maybe that's in my name, to want such a world. Because that's where it all starts. Have a vision. That's why my vision is so simple. Happy and healthy people on a healthy planet. Nobody can be against that. But then, of course, they have to, they always ask questions, but how? It's so complicated. And then I try to do sessions like this in all kinds of ways, local, online, and try to make it a bit more simple. Okay, I will send you the sheets. There is
Thank you.
a few more sheets in there. It is about synergy, synthesis, and syntropy. You can look up the words because it is maybe a bit difficult words, but they are like really the basis how you can have abundance with growing economies, because people find it always confusing. But synergy is very simply 1 + 1 is more than 2. If you work together, you can really do it. But you have to then take each other's rest streams, make value with that, money with that in business models. Synthesis has all to do with the fact that it needs to be different entities. So you need to be complementary and not the same. We now always try to be also, because we don't dare to be either with different people, or we have in a city, if we have a furniture, we have in Holland a furniture rows where all the furniture companies are together. Oh, that's stupid. If you want to use each other's rest streams, you need to be diverse. So diverse entities, and that also means we do a lot of consortiums between governments and businesses, NGOs, universities, research institutes, and citizens. And then the big communication problem comes up, because how do you speak the language of all of them? I'll do more masterclasses about that as well. And then also syntropy. And syntropy is really the moment that a river starts flowing. It is a term from biology, from ecology. So it is, at some point you have wetlands, and it is either, it seems like still water, but it is not, because it has lots of vortexes inside and lots of cleaning mechanisms. And then at some point, when there is enough water in there, it starts flowing in one direction. And that's also why I really love the word syntropy, because we flow then to the horizon, but we also have to understand that we all see the same horizon, but from a different angle in all countries and all cultures. And syntropy also has to do with new mathematics, which is the super formula. I also write about that sometimes. It is hardcore science math, and it came in 2003, so it's not so old. So I want all engineering and chemistry, because also there in biomimicry we do a lot of green chemistry, because at this moment chemistry is just cutting and pasting. It is more physics than chemistry. And that's a bit of a problem also in engineering and in chemistry. It's also why we don't have self-healing materials yet, or roads that clean the water, or the things that nature does. So that's why that kind of engineering and mathematics and the new insights is very important as well. If you want to do in the sheets, will also be biomimicry. Biomimicry is very simply, it always starts with ethics, with reconnection in whatever way you do that, but connection to nature and your own body. People go to the doctor for pills because our system is built on sickness, not on health. We don't know our own bodies anymore. And then we translate always in development potential. I've shown in this hour and or the 2.5 hours that we've done now, that there is a lot of development potential in the system, because that is unused rest materials, unused waste materials, unused pollution, and we can create value with it. We can make it healthy processes, but we can also create money with it. So I also mean abundant economies in money. But then, of course, you have to make sure it is distributed to the right places. And that is, again, a bit of a problem, because a lot of, as I said in the beginning, if you have a multinational, it sucks money out of the system and brings it into, the pockets of anonymous shareholders who not have any connection to the region. So that is also a bit of a problem. That's why I'm always with diverse SMEs. And a lot of economies go on SMEs, just the governments don't want to talk to them because it becomes a bit more difficult than making one deal with one multinational. Well, that's a problem. So they should group in big, diverse groups. And really, I don't mind the protests so much at this moment, because let them protest and make sure that they are heard. So how do we translate it? It's always a lot of exploration. There is, of course, a lot of knowledge about nature. So sometimes we do biology to design, which means we copy nature literally. And we also do challenge to biology. But then, of course, we do look at what has the best outcome that we can measure, that we can foresee, predict. And then we explore and we discover and we create, we evaluate again, and so this is the normal system that is also used in regeneration a lot, with lots of input from the diverse people in a group. Do you have any questions at this moment?
There'll be many questions. I'm sure.
It has been a lot of information, so I think it is good that we yeah, I will stop the share so we can see each other again. And it is good that we are recording, so you can look back if you want. I will share the link with you. I will put it on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. It is also called Abundanism. There's lots of videos, also not by me personally, but also collected videos about healthy buildings and about super formula or about other things. So you can have a look there. They're all in channels. I try to group them a bit logical so you can find them. And then, yeah, it is always a lot of information. So that is a bit the difficulty in these kind of sessions. I try to share a lot from all the projects, but it's also a bit difficult to, yeah, then grasp it all in one go. How was it for you? Can we do a little round, please?
I think maybe one thing that sticks out for me is that it's really important to find pools of inspiration from a lot of different areas. So looking at the examples that you give, the wide variety of examples are basically communicating to us as well, is showing a lot of diversity actually in where you gather your knowledge from, but also say the languages that you have to speak in different communities and on different levels to be able to grasp systems. So maybe in the practice itself, it might not be very difficult, but it is a lot. So you have to, there is still a lot of work. It's not maybe not very difficult by itself, but it's still, those are big tasks, I think.
Yeah, I can make it easier for you because I will plan a session about communication, how I communicate, because in this session I am with people who understand the concepts of regeneration. We are on one page, so I can be just open with you about a lot of things, and then I want to share a lot. But if, for instance, I'm with regular, I don't know, purchasers, or I do it differently. And also when I am in group with citizens or with AI, because I do sometimes work with AI people. And then we also do it in communicative sessions. So the communication you can structure in such ways that people do not have to understand it all. But you came to this session in a small group where I thought, let's share a lot. And then we can see, how you can take it further. Diana, how was it for you?
It was great. I feel like I would like to know more and get to practice it and maybe practice some systemic design in some, I don't know, example solution, I would love to be able to practice it and experience it more and learn from you.
What would you like to be as a session then? Really going for the visuals?
Maybe exercise?
Important for you?
Yeah, but maybe like, for example, I imagine like, okay, let's take this problem and let's try to figure out a solution for something, so I can understand how it works in the practical way, like the thinking process. I think that would be great. And I love this session.
What kind of problem would you take? What kind of problem would you like to take? Because then I plan a session for that. Would be great.
I don't know, maybe food packaging.
Food packaging. Oh, that's a good one. We'll do one about food packaging.
How can we solve all the food packaging problem?
Yeah,
Or
that's a very good one. I'll plan one.
okay,
You'll
I'll
see it
be
on.
very excited.
Yeah. Hey, Louise, how was it for you?
Very nice. For me, it's always very inspirational. I see it as a new way of thinking, and when I follow you at LinkedIn, I see that I have the feeling that people see you more and more. That in the beginning it was sometimes maybe too complicated because you know so much and you share so much, and people are not used to think like this, and then it sounds too good to be true, maybe, and yeah, maybe
Mhm.
not true then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, um, so I'm a little bit thinking with you because I see so much value in what you bring, and when you're talking with Diana and this moment, I think that's also nice that people can give you input and that you react on things, so that you have a dialogue or something
Mhm.
in the medium. Are you only at LinkedIn or?
My main ways are LinkedIn and Medium.
Medium, okay.
Is
Yeah.
the story platform. And at this moment, I'm becoming busy again on Facebook
Okay.
with the community here. So that is Peloponnese Living.
Okay.
And
It's
that is
because of the Greek situation that Facebook
that is the
is a
Greek,
good one.
yes.
Yeah.
But of course, it is a platform about it. It is more a message of nature and culture. To get the big problem here is that the cash flows.
Yeah.
And the big problem is that it is 2 months in a year. They have mass tourism, and only Greeks, or mostly Greeks. And the rest of the year is kind of,
Yeah.
it is a nice village, and there's enough to do, and it is really great, but I love to be here. But so at this moment we made a plan for digital nomads and for people like older people who want to have a healthy lifestyle. There are a lot of people from Holland who like to do overwinteren, spend winter in the Mediterranean. They always go to Spain to Frietje van Pietje and not to Greece. So then we try to get them to better places and make then also, because the nature is so beautiful here. It's Natura 2000 area, and you feel the clear blue sea and the mountains here. So it's also a very healthy place. So that's why I want people to be able to be here a bit longer. So that is
Very
not
nice.
And then because my friends are doing here the projects to really revitalize the villages, I try to contribute to that also with Facebook and Instagram. We'll be more active.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So
for me, it's very inspirational, and in a way, when I help clients, I always help develop things a little bit, so it helps. It always cycles through when I have knowledge, because we're always connecting dots, and so maybe it's secondary, but you're
always really
real
important.
inspiration.
And that's the development potential. I told you it is the development potential that we have to tap into.
Yeah.
And then there is a lot possible. As I say, of the biomimicry strategies, only 20% is used at this moment. The rest is not.
Yeah.
So I can say, well, it's not biomimicry to make a robot arm that is, I don't know, inspired by some insect, but then they have to study the insect, so that reconnects. So
Yeah.
I think about it like that then.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it was really nice to finally meet you in a way.
Yes,
Although
I
you're
always
at,
love to meet people.
what
yeah.
is it? The light.
Yeah.
Green.
Aurora borealis.
Yeah, I love the Northern Light. I haven't seen it
Northern
in
Light.
reality, the Northern Light, but I like it as a background because it moves a little and it's still, yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice.
Looks good on you.
Well, this was the first session, so I must say it's been the first one for me. I have decided to be a bit more visible and to have conversations in reality with people.
Nice,
So I
yeah.
hope that more people will
Yeah.
come.
I really like it that you're talking very slow, and yeah, I really you take the time. Yeah.
Yes, well, it took me like 15 years to get this far. So it's, and if I want everybody to be a bit quicker, then it's good that I talk slowly, but you are also able to do stuff with it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I found it the best way to do it is the how to connect it to local ecosystems and local cultures.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Really liked it a lot. And then maybe next time. In another
Yeah.
2 weeks is the next one. And then I will do it every week because next week I'll be traveling from Greece back to Holland. And then I'll be over the whole summer in Holland. So by then we will have every week. And once every month, it will be a free session. So there's no fee attached. Because I want to develop the super formula for chemistry and engineering and all the, well, everything. It is about resonance. Well, resonance is rather a difficult term in science also. But then the super formula already had 20 years of really getting into science. So the neuroscientists are using it, the psychology ones, but also the engineers and the architects, the data scientists are really making sure that we only need to transfer a few KB instead of a lot of GB over the system. So it really saves a lot of energy. So there's also in the algorithms, you can really design very ethical AI with it. So I really, and the chemistry, I must say that is maybe my biggest concern because we have so much toxic chemistry around and we need to get the fuss out of the soil. I have certain projects that do that with resonance. And we also need to design new chemistry that is biodegradable, really biodegradable. Because otherwise we keep polluting the systems. Yeah?
Yeah.
So thank you for being here and see you
Thank
again.
Bye.
It's a lovely day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.